Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning, and we have a lot to cover this morning. We have a few viewer comments from after yesterday's program. We are going to give you that update on Cory Booker, for better or for worse. Today is Liberation Day, and you know what? I forgot to mention on yesterday's program, and I may mention it a few times during this show. Yesterday, this is hard to believe, but yesterday was the 1 year anniversary of Frankly Speaking going 2 hours. Hard to believe. I meant to mention it on yesterday's program. It totally escaped my mind. I don't know how we ever did 1 hour, and you'll see that with how much we have to cover this morning. But yes, it's been 1 year since we've went to 2 hours. No looking back. I love it. All right, let's go to some viewer comments. We had a viewer call in and leave a voice message, and you can do that. And I thank them. And I don't want to go through all the numbers because I did not have time to verify them this morning. But the thought from this viewer is that it was the college campus protests in May of 1970 is the exact time that they gave when 4 million students joined protests that they believe ended the Vietnam War, that it was these protests that ended the Vietnam War. And they gave numbers in reference, tying it into what is happening with Hamas, and specifically using the UN's numbers. I'm not going to go through them. Haven't had time to verify them, but also I question, if I'm being honest, a lot of time the UN numbers, a lot of time they're using Hamas propaganda numbers, the Hamas ministries numbers. But the thought was, and I try not to skip too many comments. Sometimes we do just for the nature of them. But in their case, they ended by saying, and the monster of a president is talking about evacuating people from Gaza and making it into a beach resort. How can you not call him a monster? May the world protest. So I believe this is in reference to what we've been talking about a lot lately about the protests on college campuses in reference to what is happening with Hamas, their attack on Israel, and the ongoing war. So I'm paraphrasing that, but equating the two to the Vietnam. And we talked about this early on, that they've tried and this is not a criticism of this viewer specifically, but they have tried to tie in the protests on college campuses to the Vietnam War protests. That's what they normally do. It's something, fascination that the media has with that time in place, always trying to compare really every protest to the Vietnam War protests. But I appreciate you calling in. Comment from a different viewer. Hello, Frank. I was just curious to know if viewer Rick, and Rick has been sending in some comments as of late, also waited 66 years to pay attention because he could be part of the problem. Well, and I understand what the viewer is saying. In Rick's defense, none of this makes sense if you haven't been watching the last few shows, but he did say specifically this is the first time he has spoken out. I don't know if it's the first time he hasn't been paying attention, but if you're spoon-fed the so-called news and take it at face value, that's problematic. A deeper dive is necessary, in my opinion. Thank you, viewer. I would agree with that. It's if you're just going to the mainstream media, if you're going to the legacy media, you are going to have, I would argue, a more warped view of what is actually happening. And I think there is so much bias. We actually have examples of it later on in the program if we have an opportunity to get to it, where the media is clearly not learned their lesson from the historic election in November and is still very openly biased, even if it costs them. But at the end of the day, it's about pushing an agenda. But thank you to everybody's comments. Now, Mark writes in this morning, he says, "Good morning, Frank." Well, good morning, Mark. And he says, I'm glad you mentioned this, Mark. "I'll be your Huckleberry." Val Kilmer has passed away at the age of 65 years old. Mark writes, "I like him in the movie Tombstone." Val Kilmer, the Hollywood film star. You may know him from Top Gun, Batman Forever, as Mark mentioned, Tombstone. Passing away at the age of 65. He succumbed to pneumonia is what it was, but he had been battling with throat cancer for quite some time, even having 2 tracheotomies. So thank you, Mark, for passing along what would be breaking news. Okay. And yes, I like Tombstone as well. "I'll be your Huckleberry" is a great line in that movie. So many great lines. So today is Liberation Day. We will find out more. He will roll out the measures in the Rose Garden at 4 p.m. tonight after Wall Street markets close, promising that they will stop America from being ripped off and will deliver a new golden age of U.S. industry. So that'll be something we'll be discussing in depth on tomorrow's program. But remember that today is Liberation Day. Okay. I promised you after yesterday's program that we would give you an update on Cory Booker's marathon. It's not a filibuster. I mean, how people use the word filibuster, I suppose it was, but it wasn't blocking any kind of nomination or blocking any kind of vote. Well, Cory Booker had his I am Spartacus moment. Now, if you recall that reference, he said back some time ago, and I don't remember exactly what it was in reference to. It might have been Brett Kavanaugh's nomination. But he said, I have to have my I am Spartacus moment. And so people started calling him Spartacus. And that's what this filibuster, I'm going to use that term, even though it wasn't, really was. It was Cory Booker making it about Cory Booker, right? No real substance, but he's always wanted to reach that next level. He's always wanted to run for president. Do you recall he disagreed? He was kind of a rising star at one point, and he disagreed with Obama on something kind of minute, if I remember. And that almost ended his career. He received so much pushback that he walked it back, changed his opinion, because he went from being an up-and-coming star to being kind of ousted by his own party. So now, since then, he's been trying to make his comeback. He had his I am Spartacus moment. Now he had whatever you want to call this marathon speech. He started it at 7 p.m. on Monday, and he finished after 25 hours and 5 minutes, which now breaks the Senate record for the longest floor speech, 25 hours and 5 minutes. What it accomplished, I'm not entirely sure. But the Senate chamber erupted in applause when Booker's remarks finally concluded. Now, I'm not sure if this is something where he wants to start being mentioned for more of a leadership position. Now, he isn't in some type of leadership. But, you know, as Chuck Schumer, and I have a really interesting piece that we'll bring up later on about Chuck Schumer, but as the long knives are out for Chuck Schumer, and many in the Democrat Party are calling for him to be ousted, Cory Booker's looking to fill that gap and come in and be the voice of the resistance. I think it kind of falls on deaf ears. I think the people that are upset that Democrats aren't doing more, I could be wrong on this, and people can weigh in, but that are upset that Democrats aren't doing more, I don't see them seeing this as effective in any way. Now, Booker's grandstanding speech comes after the Democrats tried to turn the 2018 Senate nomination hearing into, it was Brett Kavanaugh, into a circus. And that's when he spoke up at the time, claiming, this is the closest I'll get to an I am Spartacus moment, of course, in reference to the movie with Kirk Douglas. And again, receiving a lot of kind of mockery back then when he did it. Now, during his speech, he brought up people like Representative John Lewis, the late Representative John Lewis. He brought up people like the late John McCain. He obviously went on the attack against Elon Musk. So he broke the record. In a little bit, because we have some other breaking news that I need to get to this morning, we will read a kind of, I think, an interesting opinion piece on this. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in the program, but I promised you yesterday that I would give you an update. 25 hours and 5 minutes, Cory Booker giving that speech on the floor. Making history. Many in the media trying to compare it to very historic speeches. I'm not sure if that is necessarily the case. I think what we're seeing here is someone that's trying to put himself back in the spotlight, and I'm not sure if it worked. People can write in, call in, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you think this was a successful bid to go after Trump to show that you are part of the resistance. I think most people weren't following it. I think they may have heard about it after the fact, after the record came in. But I could be wrong on that. Well, when we come back, because we're already running late, when we come back, we're going to talk about that Wisconsin Supreme Court race. We're also going to talk about the Florida election and a few other issues that were breaking from last night, and the House essentially going on break, canceling the rest of the votes for this week, what that means for Trump's agenda. The reason they did so, and I talked about it yesterday on the program, is that fight over proxy votes for mothers in Congress, giving them the opportunity to vote proxy when they have their child. There was some back and forth on that. We talked about it yesterday. We're going to give you another update on that. But as I said, I'm running late. I see some comments coming in. I see some waves coming in. May I ask you to keep them coming in? And we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and have been diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call today.
Frankly Speaking Roof Cam is brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs.
One of the I like most about being a mortgage loan officer is helping people make dreams come true.
The most satisfying part is seeing people succeed in accomplishing the purchase of a home.
Whether it's refinancing for a lower monthly payment, a lower interest rate, or to tap in your home's equity, Whether you're buying your first home or looking to refinance, First Heritage will be here to help.
My name is Cindy.
My name is Tracy.
My name is Peter.
My name is Deb.
We're here to guide you.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. And how can we help like that in our small businesses, not to sound cliche, but are the backbone of our community? Let's talk about we. Thanks, as always, to you, the viewers, for sending in your texts and your voicemails. Now we go to a comment. This is from John in Elmira. Make sure to catch Frankly Speaking only on AM Big Fox News WYDC or visit our website at WYDCTV.com.
Fox Sports app isn't just any sports app. It's your sports app. Your teams, your highlights, your scores. Get more of what you want. To the end zone. Stream your teams live. It's free with your pay TV subscription.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. All right, let's go to a lot of viewer comments. People are ready. They're fired up this morning. We got waves. We got comments coming in, I should say. All right, let's get right to it. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. Cory Booker was seeking attention, and the only way to do that was chasing the record speech. Yes, he wanted to break that record. That was clearly the goal from the beginning. Sorry, but it was ineffective. Just another Democrat seeking a spotlight. Yeah, and I think it also comes off as his I Am Spartacus moment, where it comes off flat to me, where it's nothing. And I guess if you're a Democrat, I would love to hear you weigh in on this. Is this what you want when you are going to these various protests asking for resistance against Trump? A speech that, at the end of the day, the only thing it did was break a time record. It wasn't stopping some major piece of legislation. It wasn't stopping a nomination. It was a speech just to give a speech. And isn't that kind of what Democrats are complaining about, that with Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, others, that they're talking maybe a big game on the Sunday morning shows, but they're not accomplishing anything? And isn't that exactly what Cory Booker did, is talk without accomplishing anything? That's what I don't understand it myself, but did break a record. Comment from a different viewer. It's pretty bad when a county legislator has to take up the fight against NYSEG while our much higher paid lawmakers sit on their thumbs and do nothing. Good point. That's in reference to Rodney Strange in Chemung County, looking into NYSEG. We know a lot of people, and I think someone in Schuyler is talking about it as well, because of the outrage over people's increased NYSEG bills. That's a very good point. Comment from a different viewer. Anyone who would want to rant and rave for even 1 hour is a nut. I'm hoping you're referencing Cory Booker and not me. No, my show is 2 hours, so you're not talking about me. Thank you. Just joking, but I understand your comment. And then Mark poses a fantastic question. Mark asks, I wonder if Ken watched Booker for 25 hours and 5 minutes. Ken, if you're new to the program, has been fantastic in watching the Sunday shows, watching the Democratic National Convention. So many of these things that are somewhat difficult to watch, he watches them and then writes in and gives us his takeaways, if you will. If Ken did that, the jokes about him seeking help that he makes himself may actually go into the nature of serious. We may have to have a private conversation about that, but I thought that was funny, Mark. You made me laugh when I read that, and I hope Ken is watching and he heard it as well. All right, we got some other comments and some other waves coming in. We'll get to those in just a moment. Susan Crawford was elected to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. That means that the bench is kept in liberal hands. It was the most expensive judicial race of all time. The Democrat-backed Crawford's win over the GOP-supported Brad Schimmel in the officially nonpartisan election will give liberals a 4-3 majority on the 7-member court for at least 3 more years, during which Democrats are expected to push to redraw the state's congressional district lines to punish Republicans and challenge a law enacted by former GOP Governor Scott Walker that stripped most state government workers of collective bargaining rights. So they won. Now, Schimmel confirmed to supporters he had conceded to Crawford and even cut off one woman when the woman started yelling that they cheated. No, he said, you've got to accept the results. Limited polling had shown a tight race between the two contenders, with Crawford consistently, if narrowly, ahead. But the actual outcome was a convincing win for Crawford, who led Schimmel by 9 percentage points, with 89% of the expected vote counted. This does have major implications. Now, the media is presenting it as, see, the Trump agenda is over. The Trump era is over. But then it's hard to say that when in Florida, Republicans won that special election as Randy Fine, Jimmy Patronis overcome their, as the New York Post puts it, pre-voting jitters. Florida Republican State Senator Randy Fine and GOP State CFO Jimmy Patronis easily won 2 crucial special elections for the U.S. House in the Sunshine State, temporarily bolstering the GOP's razor-thin majority. President Trump tweeted on, I guess that's not the right word at all, posted on Truth Social, in all caps, as he is wont to do, both Florida House seats have been won big by the Republican candidate. The Trump endorsement, as always, proved far greater than the Democrats' forces of evil. Congratulations to America. So that was a major win. So if you notice, and I was in my show prep this morning, it was amazing to see the blaring headlines about the Wisconsin Supreme Court win for Democrats and the much lower on the news scale by the legacy media that big win for Republicans in Florida in that House race. But going back to Wisconsin, because there is some good news. Wisconsin voters overwhelmingly supported a ballot measure on Tuesday to add a voter ID requirement to the state's constitution. The measure was backed by 63.1% of voters. So keep that in mind as the media tries to tell you that these ideas about voter ID are frowned upon by the voters, that people don't like it. That's never been the case, but it's never been left to voters. Never. But it's very rarely left up to voters. It's normally something that the Democrats try to fight in court. President Trump wrote on Truth Social, voter ID just approved in Wisconsin election. Democrats fought hard against this, presumably so they can cheat. This is a big win for Republicans, maybe the biggest win of the night. It should allow us to win Wisconsin like I just did in the presidential election for many years to come. Now, the measure amends Wisconsin's constitution to require photo identification when voting. Wisconsin state law already required voters to show identification, but enshrining the law into the Constitution makes it much more difficult for state legislatures or the courts to undo it. Acceptable forms of ID for voting include photographic identification issued by this state, by the federal government, by a federally recognized American Indian tribe or band in the state, or by a college or university in the state that verifies the elector's identity. So, kind of a mixed bag yesterday, where Wisconsin adds voter ID requirements to the state constitution. Republicans win that Florida special election for the House, but that liberal judge did win in the fight for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. All right, so there's some breaking news. When we come back, just a little bit more on Cory Booker, and we've got other things to discuss as well. We have a lot of New York State issues this morning that we definitely have to get to. As I mentioned earlier, Chris Callis will be our guest. He's going to tell us this morning about the upcoming college fair. So if you are thinking about furthering your education, or you have a kid or a grandkid looking It's this time of year to start talking about college. You're going to want to hear this, so you're prepared to go to the college fair. That's coming up a little bit later on. But we got to take a short break. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Attention, Elmeron may lead to vision loss.
If you have suffered vision problems after taking Elmeron to treat bladder pain, call the Hearn Law Firm. Elmeron may be responsible for your vision problems, and you may deserve compensation for your injuries.
If you took Elmeron and now have vision problems, call the Hearn Law Firm at 888-308-3866 right now. You could find out if you qualify in less than 2 minutes. Call 888-308-3866 for your free case review.
What better way to start or end every day than relaxing in your very own Hesselson's hot tub? Massage therapy, relaxation, stress reliever, pain management, soothing muscles, or just spending time with a loved one. Hot water therapy really does make every day better. Hesselson's has been a part of this great community for over 70 years, still being locally owned and operated. So make the drive to Hesselson's and start making your path to a better life today. And after 70 years, it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Invite you to discover what makes our school community so special, including the fact that everything, top-notch education, housing, healthcare, food, clothing, technology, and much more is provided to our students at no cost to our families. This is thanks to the generosity of our founders, chocolate maker Milton S. Hershey and his wife, Catherine.
Anywhere can record crimes as they happen, and we're going to watch them right here.
He just took his car.
With cameras everywhere, you can run, but you can't hide. Watch iCrime.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. We've got a lot of comments coming in. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. Could you give Cory Booker a wake-up call? He was up all night, and he wouldn't want to miss Liberation Day. That's right. You don't want to sleep through Liberation Day. It's a very good point. Cory Booker coming in at 25 hours and 5 minutes. And really, I guess the only win, the only victory in that speech is that he did beat the record set by Strom Thurmond. Again, this seems to be a clear case of what Democrats are so upset about, which is do nothing but pat yourself on the back for it. They want a fight against Trump. And what was this a fight for? It was a fight for attention from Cory Booker. It was a fight to, for some reason, break that Senate record. But what, at the end of the day, did it accomplish? Comment from a different viewer. Frank, I do believe if you are a member of Congress, you should be present to vote. And if you miss votes, your pay should be reduced. I think you're exactly right. We're going to talk about that kind of... and I don't want to say controversy, but the kind of the inter-party fighting by Republicans. Unfortunately, we had hoped that wouldn't happen. We were hoping that Republicans would stay unified to further Trump's agenda. But as is normally the case, there's always going to be some Republicans that want to be contrarian, want to be kind of obstructionists. We're going to talk about that. Comment from a different viewer. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. I find it truly hilarious that the green energy movement pushes for wind and solar energy. When these sites are prepared, they cut all the trees, clear all the vegetation. So I question how green it is. Then I also wonder why, with the amount of wind and solar power projects in New York State, why do the rates keep increasing? Shouldn't they be decreasing? That's a great point. Also, when you talk about how hilarious it is, kind of the hypocrisy in it all, think about the same group that's talking about this green energy is now firebombing electric vehicles. We actually have kind of in almost in reference to what you were saying, viewer, a comment, or I should say an opinion piece on that. Perhaps we'll get to a little bit later on in regards to the left showing their hypocrisy in their attack over Elon Musk. Ken writes in, hey Ken, I think Cory Booker epitomizes the Democrat Party. He talked for over 25 hours and didn't say anything productive. By the way, I missed the last 15 minutes of his stunt. It turns out that when you're over 70, it's not a good idea to not eat, drink, talk, or take bathroom breaks for 25 hours straight. Yes, thank you, Ken. So I'm sure you heard Mark's comment. That's very funny. I agree with you, and actually the New York Post agrees with you, Ken. Even using your word here, Cory Booker's sad stunt epitomizes Democrats' empty agenda. That is something that I think is interesting in this. And I did not watch, in full disclosure, I did not watch the 25 hours and 5 minutes. But there hasn't even been a major takeaway there. As far as I can tell from the articles, there hasn't been that one big line, that one big speech, section of the speech they're pointing to as being, I guess for lack of a better word, effective. But what the Post says is that Cory Booker's pointless imitation filibuster epitomizes Democrats' pathetic incoherence in the wake of November's landslide defeat. He took to the floor not to achieve something, nor even to oppose anything in particular, but as a stunt to symbolize how these are not normal times, which actually nobody who paid any attention denies. The self-promoting 20-hour-plus marathon, 25 hours and 5 minutes, drew a few curious viewers online and might have spoken to those in the party's left-wing base who are still fuming that Chuck Schumer didn't force a government shutdown last month. Maybe, but if you are upset that Chuck Schumer, if you're a Democrat who is taking part in these protests that are happening once a week, sometimes more than once a week, if you're someone that is outraged at Chuck Schumer, are you encouraged by Cory Booker talking for 25 hours and 5 minutes, but not accomplishing anything, not blocking anything, not supporting anything, just talking to talk? I think it would make you more upset. I think you would look at that and say, this is what's wrong with the Democrat Party today. But continuing with what the Post had to say, it did nothing to thwart the Senate GOP majority or slow Trump's agenda. And it certainly didn't win back a single swing voter. Such symbolic performances are, kind of why people have problems with politics in general. But that is where Democrats are right now. Indeed, even as Booker was babbling on the Senate floor, City Comptroller Brad Lander was announcing plans to sue Tesla for securities fraud, accusing CEO Elon Musk for abandoning the company for his budget-slashing Doge role, and so causing the company's stock price to fall almost 40%. Lander's excuse: in less than 3 months, Tesla's drop has cost the city's $285 billion pension funds some $300 million. But suing CEOs over stock drops is a proven loser. This is purely about Lander hoping to bolster his sinking mayoral candidacy by posturing against Musk. Then again, that's more of a point than we can find in Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Bernie Sanders barnstorming the hinterlands with their ridiculous fighting oligarchy tour. Sure, the two socialists can draw crowds by ranting that the Democrat Party is heavily dominated by billionaires and run by consultants who are way out of touch with reality, but out of touch with reality also describes the socialists in the eyes of most Americans. And their tour won't change that, nor anything else. Look, this all boils down to the party is down to a 20% approval rating because Democrats keep fighting on the wrong side of 80-20 issues like protecting trans rights to compete in girls' sports. Grandstanding for the 20% will win their cheers. Period. Nobody else cares. Cory Booker. So yes, again, I think it does show what, and I'm not going to speak for Democrats out there, but I think it shows why so many Democrats are outraged at their leadership. Because for 25 hours and 5 minutes, Cory Booker showed showed that you could use a lot of words and attack Trump and not accomplish anything at the end of the day. And isn't that why their approval rating is so very low? This was all about Cory Booker trying to make a name for himself again, trying to get himself back in the limelight and have his name thrown around with the likes of AOC and Bernie Sanders and people who they speculate will they run in 2028. But at the end of the day, accomplished nothing, and very few watched. Now, we were talking earlier, and we could continue to talk about Cory Booker. Keep those comments coming in. But we talked about this, I guess this GOP rebellion is the term that they're using. But a normally sleepy procedural vote ended in drama for the House of Representatives after a rebellion by 9 Republicans against their own party forced chamber proceedings for the week to grind to a halt. It puts the future in question for 2 key bills backed by the Trump administration that were slated to get a vote today and tomorrow. Speaker Johnson told reporters that votes were canceled for the rest of the week. Quote, "It's a very disappointing result on the floor there. A handful of Republicans joined with all the Democrats to take down a rule. That's rarely done. It's very unfortunate. That rule being brought down means that we can't have any further action on the floor this week." Now, it is an embarrassing setback. Fox News saying it, an embarrassing setback for Republicans. A rule vote is not an expression of support or opposition for any specific measure. Rather, it's a procedural hurdle, normally falling along party lines, that allows for the House to begin debate and eventually vote on whatever bills the rule is covering. In this case, the rule would have allowed for debate and floor consideration of bills that would have limited district judges' abilities to levy nationwide injunctions and would have mandated proof of citizenship to register to vote. It comes amid a weeks-long battle over the ability to vote remotely for new parents. So because of this issue with Representative Anna Paulina Luna, who has been somewhat out of the limelight, she was a big Trump supporter. Now this proxy vote issue she's taken up as kind of her champion cause. And because of it, her and 8 other Republicans sided with Democrats. And I always find that interesting when you say, as a Republican, you're fighting the good fight, but you end up voting with the Democrats. It never quite makes sense to me. But bringing, and this is early, but bringing Trump's agenda to a halt as they are forced to quit voting, shut down voting for the rest of the week, and on what would have been 2 major parts of Trump's agenda. And again, a lot of this is wonky because she attempted to force the bill onto the floor via a mechanism called a discharge petition, which would effectively end-run leaders to hold a House-wide vote on legislation, provided the petition gets support from a simple majority of the House. Now, if you're not familiar with why she's doing all this, she quit the House Freedom Caucus. What she wants is new parents in the House to vote remotely for 12 weeks surrounding their child's birth. Why I find this so interesting, she even admits that that's a very low number who throughout the history of Congress, who this would affect. So it became really a wonky procedural kind of battle. Now it sparked a backlash among Republicans who either supported Luna's efforts or opposed leaders' attempts to change previously agreed upon House rules, and in most cases a combination of both. Luna said, "I think that today is a pretty historical day for the entire conference and showing that, yeah, the body has decided that parents deserve a voice in Washington and also to the importance of female members having a vote in Washington, D.C." Meanwhile, a source familiar with the House Rules Committee told Fox News that some Republicans on the panel were frustrated at being kept in the dark by House leaders until the final moments before the committee vote on Tuesday. All Republicans on the committee voted for the rule, however. Now, Representative Tim Burkett, Jeff Van Drew, Greg Stube, Ryan McKenzie, Nick LaLota, Max Miller, and Mike Lawler were among those who voted to kill the rule. Miller writing, "I could not in good conscience vote for an unprecedented rule that would pull the rug out from under Representative Luna's discharge petition that got the required signatures fair and square. I cannot imagine a mother who has spent 9 months going through the ringer being told that you can't be with your infant because you are one of 435 people." So that's where we are at on that. Your thoughts on that? Your thoughts on Cory Booker? We'll talk a little bit more about that squabble. We do have a lot about New York State issues I think you're going to find really interesting. Some in regards to corrections officers, some in regards to the budget. I just looked. I'm running really late. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox.
We need a change.
Yeah. Remember when we talked about becoming Milton Hershey Schoolhouse parents? Well, what do you think? Did you see this?
Kids, we're moving to Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Will we go to school here?
You'll go to a local school, but we'll be living on campus with the students whose lives we'll be helping.
We'll have new friends?
Yeah, we'll have a whole community to help us along the way, too.
We'll have the opportunity to help others together.
It's a career unlike any other, where family is part of the experience. Become house parents at Milton Hershey School.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. And how can we help like that in our small businesses, not to sound cliche, but are the backbone of our community? Let's talk about thanks, as always, to you, the viewers, for sending in your texts and your voicemails. Now we go to a comment. This is from John in Elmira. Make sure to catch Frankly Speaking only on AM Big Fox News WYDC or visit our website at WYDCTV.com.
Something with a diamond in it.
Diamondback rattlesnake.
It's in the name. Name a low-calorie food you might make your edible underwear out of.
Salmon.
Watch it weeknights. Share it the next day.
Wild caught Norwegian teriyaki.
Share in the fun. Weeknights on Family Feud.
7 and 7:30 on Big Fox.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Couple of comments from viewers before we take another break because I ran very late. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. Cory Booker's displays reminds me of a young stallion showing that he has the stamina to take over the herd. Schumer couldn't stand up for an hour. And there is the optics of that he is kind of the younger person, Schumer. We know Schumer couldn't do that. Cartoonishly crowing, saying, "I'll protect the flock." Even low information voters might now recognize his name. Thank you, Fred. Comment from a different viewer. Was Cory Booker eventually speaking to an empty room at like 2 a.m.? No, well, that's the one thing that was unfortunate. There's a lot of security and people around aides and things like that receiving a lot of extra hours. We'll put it that way. I don't know if they received any overtime pay, but having to be there, especially security, for the whole time. I was also wondering if he ever took a bathroom break. I've got information on that in just a moment. I also noticed he didn't have a whole lot of papers in front of him. Maybe he was reading a lot of it over and over again. He would have been more productive had he read the Bible out loud. Good point. If you recall, when Ted Cruz did this, not for that amount of time, but when he did it, if you recall, he read from Dr. Seuss, and I can't remember what book, but that was kind of a big deal at the time. So what we learned from Jeffrey Gertz, which is Booker's communication director, we learned, I never thought I'd be having this conversation. He did not take a bathroom break. But according to the communications director, telling NPR that Cory Booker was not wearing a diaper or a catheter, that what he said himself, Booker told reporters that he hadn't eaten since Friday and stopped drinking water on Sunday to intentionally dehydrate himself. Now, Chuck Schumer, trying to piggyback off of Booker's, I don't know if you can call this success. That's why I'm confused. I don't know what is successful about this other than you broke some time frame. But Chuck Schumer saying, do you know how proud this caucus is of you? Do you know how proud America is of you? That's what Chuck Schumer said to Cory Booker. Are you proud? Why? What was the end game? What? And this is not knocking what he did, but at the end game, what is there? What tangible thing is there to be proud of other than, I guess, breaking a record of a speech on the Senate floor? I can't see anything else tangible. But even Kamala Harris weighing in on it, saying the true measure of a leader is not based on who you beat down, but who you lift up. For over 24 hours, my friend Cory Booker stood on the floor of the Senate and lifted up the voices of the American people harmed by the current administration. We must continue to fight for the best of who we are as Americans. Thank you, Cory, for your leadership. So that is leadership. Again, I would think if you're a Democrat, you'd say, could we maybe try to accomplish something? Get something done other than breaking some record that no one really knew existed until, I mean, historians did, but what was the end game? I just don't understand it. Am I missing the point completely on this? And by the way, when Kamala Harris says the true measure of a leader is not based on who you beat down, but who you lift up, he wasn't trying to beat down Musk and Trump the whole time. And it's so weird. It's just like that Michelle Obama statement about when they go low, we go high. And of course, they've never done that. So we can continue to talk about Cory Booker. Interesting. So this whole proxy vote, and we're going to have to take a short break, but Johnson has shut down the House for a week over this remote voting issue. It does hurt Trump's agenda, or at least the breakneck speed of Trump's agenda. 8 Republicans siding with Representative Anna Paulina Luna. Notably, though, no females joining Luna. Did you notice that when we read the names earlier? Tim Burkett, Jeff Van Drew, Greg Stube, Ryan McKenzie, Nick LaLota, Max Miller, and Mike Lawler. Mike Lawler is a name you're familiar with, that speculating that he's going to run for governor of New York. And 3 Republicans did not vote. Now, Johnson called the vote a disappointing result, adding 96% of House Republicans voted against proxy voting because they believe it's unconstitutional, and they agree it would open a Pandora's box. I do believe it would open a Pandora's box because we saw it with COVID when the proxy votes were allowed to happen. They were misused, really misused, shockingly misused. So that's what they're afraid of, that it would open the door for this misuse. I'm surprised that as a Republican, that Anna Paulina Luna would be fighting for this so hard, because we had in the past so many Republicans speaking out against the proxy vote. Okay. We'll talk about that when we come back, but I am running late. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and have been diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call today.
Harder makes it hard to keep your home looking like the work of art you've always envisioned it would be. Culligan softeners reduce hard water buildup and your cleaning time, transforming every drop, every splash, every rinse into the fine art of a long-lasting clean. With a Culligan water softener, revel in the breathtaking beauty of your home, just the way you've always pictured it. Culligan, water you love.
Anywhere can record crimes as they happen, and we're going to watch them right here.
He just took his car.
With cameras everywhere, you can run, but you can't hide. Watch iCrime.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. It's hard to believe that 1 year ago yesterday was the anniversary of us going to 2 hours on the air. Because I look at these comments, I think I could just read your comments for an hour. All right, let's go to them. Any more news about Doge investigating Pelosi and her comrades? In my opinion, given the shady nature of the capital gains some high-level Democrats have harvested, I believe there's going to be a detrimental explosion handed to the Democrat Party, one that will lead to its demise. Good riddance. I have not heard anything more about that. I know Elon Musk, we talked about it on the program yesterday. Elon Musk said at that rally in Wisconsin on Sunday that was kind of Doge's next target, was to look into how some of these politicians have, how did he put it, strangely become wealthy, something to that extent. I have not heard any more. I will keep you updated when I do. I'm sure a lot of people got nervous when they heard that in Washington. One viewer asking the question, who's Kamala Harris? And then Fred writes in, when Kamala speaks, nobody listens. Oh, wow. Another comment from a different viewer. What Booker accomplished was probably raising money. That's a very good point. Democrat disciples pay for the show, not realizing it's pointless. Yes, it was definitely, that's a very good point and something we've glanced over. That's what a lot of this is about. That's why Jasmine Crockett is doing some of the things that she's doing. It's at the end of the day, it's about fundraising. It gets enough attention that people will donate to him and the Democrat Party. Again, I just don't understand what it accomplishes. And I know we have a lot of Democrats that watch this program, Democrats that have been a part of the protests here on Marcus Street and elsewhere. Would love to hear your take on it, honestly. And a no judgment zone. Just curious as to what, at the end of the day, this accomplished, other than breaking the record for the longest floor speech, which doesn't affect Trump's agenda one way or the other. Comment from a different viewer. I never really took an official critical thinking course. But if Booker didn't take a bathroom break, I'm inclined to conclude that he's full of it. I like it. I like how you did that. All right. We were talking about the House canceling the rest of the votes for the week after that GOP rebellion over the proxy votes. I understand Paulina Luna's specific case of why she wants these proxy votes. I don't want to push that aside. I just think, like Speaker Johnson, that it does lead to misuse. And I don't understand why this is the fight that slows Trump's agenda when there's other ways, I think, to do it. So what the New York Post editorial board said, and I think this is a way to look at it, saying nobody had this one on their blow up the GOP House majority bingo card. But that's what the fight over proxy voting for new parents could do if Speaker Johnson doesn't find a way to diffuse it. It's already stalled votes planned this week on reining in rogue judges, repealing Biden-era regulations, and the Voting Security SAVE Act, and the battle's not over. It also prompted Representative Anna Paulina Luna to quit the House Freedom Caucus after a handful of its members sided with the Speaker in a bid to sabotage her measure to okay a member voting by proxy for 12 weeks after a new birth. Johnson and the hardliners believe proxy voting is unconstitutional and reasonably expect more excuses for it would be proposed if one is allowed. Luna and her supporters, including Representative Mike Lawler, see this one exemption as clearly aligned with Republican pro-family beliefs, and she persuaded enough other House members, albeit mostly Democrats, to collect 218 signatures on a disclosure petition to force a vote. That's playing well within House rules, but a few Freedom Caucusers reportedly lost their minds and threatened to hold up all business on the floor until Luna's motion got killed. Then the Rules Committee, aka the Speaker's Committee, is passing the rules for voting on the SAVE Act, snuck in language to ban not just Luna's discharge petition, but any future petitions that try to allow proxy voting. That is, changing a House rule halfway through the session. Not a good way to keep the narrow GOP coalition united. Luna, who had no choice but to miss votes after giving birth in 2023, slammed the backroom deal that undermines core values of the Freedom Caucus, which at this point probably needs to do some fast internal reflection if it isn't to keep shrinking. And there has been some issue with the House Freedom Caucus in the past. But Johnson, meanwhile, has to mend fences since enough Republicans broke with him on this to kill the rule and so derail the House agenda for this week at least. We guess it's telling that it's a clash of firm principles that has caused the House GOP to have this fight. But Johnson and the pro-parenthood rebels need to find some agreeable resolution. The Republicans are already at the point where they had to derail Elise Stefanik's rise to UN ambassador to keep their majority secure. Blowing up the whole Trump agenda on this hill would be crazy. Find a compromise that will get you through the 2026 elections, or you'll wind up the House GOP minority. That's the thoughts from the New York Post editorial board. Let's take our last break of this hour, wrap things up, then we'll be beginning hour number 2 in just a moment. Stay with us.
In today's world, securing your business is more important than ever. Protected with Boss Security's state-of-the-art alarm systems. When seconds matter, trust the experts. Boss Security is proud to safeguard local businesses across the Twin Tiers. Contact Boss Security today.
I invite you to discover what makes our school community so special, including the fact that everything, top-notch education, housing, healthcare, food, clothing, technology, and much more, is provided to our students at no cost to our families. This is thanks to the generosity of our founders, chocolate maker Milton S. Hershey and his wife, Catherine.
Every day, Judge Mathis presides.
Don't you ever form your mouth to talk to me like that.
Is another day when someone gets what they deserve.
What's wrong with you?
Mathis Court with Judge Mathis.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. And how can we help like that in our small businesses, not to sound cliche, but are the backbone of our community? Let's talk about thanks, as always, to you, the viewers, for sending in your texts and your voicemails. Now we go to a comment. This is from John in Elmira. Make sure to catch Frankly Speaking only on AM Big Fox News WYDC, or visit our website at WYDC. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are wrapping up hour number 1 of Frankly Speaking. A couple last comments for this hour. A viewer saying, Frank, I have a solution for the proxy voting. Raise the age limit of Congress members to 45, then the majority of people are beyond the childbirthing age. Okay, interesting take on that. Comment from a different viewer. Poor Luna. Nobody told her when you take a job, you have to be there. I think the biggest problem with it is, and I don't, listen, I think she has a point perhaps when it comes to the 12 weeks. It's not that. But man, it does open up that can of worms, doesn't it? Because look at how it was misused after COVID. It was shocking at the time, even for the little bit that I worked in Congress, to watch C-SPAN and see how many people, because you kind of had to watch C-SPAN, which was one of the hazards of the job, how many people were proxy voting. And for no other reason than they wanted to get out of town early to go on vacation, or they wanted to get out of town early to go back to their families or whatever. So yeah, it's very much misused. One other quick thing. Yeah, I have enough time for this because we had mentioned Elise Stefanik and the slim majority. House Speaker Mike Johnson told reporters yesterday the Republicans are looking for what kind of future Representative Elise Stefanik can bring to the House leadership now that she won't be serving as ambassador to the UN. Johnson said, we're trying to figure out some creative role for Elise to play. Her old job, House GOP conference chair, is occupied because of the time frame here. He and Trump have both signaled she'll be rejoining the leadership table in some capacity. So no real answers there, but something that we will keep you updated on. All right, so again, this morning we've been talking about Cory Booker. Again, asking the question, posing the question, what was accomplished other than breaking the record? Now, in his position, got some attention for the party, got some attention for himself, probably raised some pretty good money off of this, so maybe you can call that a victory. But if you're one of the Democrats that are in a part of this resistance, you want to be in this resistance, you're going to the protests maybe every week or at least occasionally, you're asking your people to do something, your people in Washington to do something. Was this, quote unquote, doing something? Now, that's the slogan of the resistance. We talked about it yesterday where they questioned whether or not the resistance in the Democrat Party is sort of like what happened with the Tea Party. For Republicans, I don't think so. But the taxed enough already slogan for the Tea Party. Well, they're saying that the resistance slogan is do something. Well, Cory Booker did do something, but is that the something that you were asking for? That's my question that we are posing today. Also, we can talk more about the proxy vote if you would like to. I think, well, we'll read some of your comments on that, but kind of an interesting and not quite expected stop, halt, temporarily, but still nonetheless a halt to Trump's agenda with those key votes now being delayed this week. All right, so we can talk about that. We have some New York State issues as well. Stay with us. Oh, and Chris Callis joining us in the next hour, so stay with us. This is, frankly speaking, hour number 1 in the books. Hour number 2, mere moments away.
Attention, Elmeron may lead to vision loss.
If you have suffered vision problems after taking Elmeron to treat bladder pain, call the Hearn Law Firm. Elmeron may be responsible for your vision problems, and you may deserve compensation for your injuries.
If you took Elmeron and now have vision problems, call the Hearn Law Firm at 888-308-3866 right now. You could find out if you qualify in less than 2 minutes. Call 888-308-3866 for your free case review.
All isn't about the money or winning or losing. It's about the Mets. The Mets. Love the Mets. It's all about the Mets on WJKP, your local New York Mets station. Make sure you don't miss a home run and tune into WJKP 48.2 to watch the New York Mets this MLB season. Brought to you by your local Nissan dealers.
Let's go, Mets! Don't have time to go to the gym? The health club is not an option? Come to Hesselson today and see why swim spas and fitness systems can fit into anyone's yard and budget. 12-foot, 14-foot, 15-foot, 18-foot dual temperature hot tub and swim spas are all on display in Hesselson's indoor and outdoor showroom. Try before you buy. 0% interest-free financing options are available on every Hesselson swim spa. Swim and exercise year-round and start making every day better. After 70 years, it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking, as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Thank you for joining us. As I mentioned in the 6 o'clock hour, yesterday, and I forgot to announce it, was the 1-year anniversary of when the program went to 2 hours, and thank heavens it did. I don't know how we did it in an hour. It's amazing. All right, keep those comments, keep those waves coming in. Fred writes in, the House shutting down for the week on a Tuesday shows a serious error by Republicans in reading the room. The House Republican whip should have known the vote result before bringing it to the floor. I suspect internal sabotage. Thank you, Fred. Let's go to New York State issues. Do you mind? As I mentioned, we're coming up in just a little bit on an interview with Chris Callis about the college fair. We interviewed him last year, interviewed him back in radio days. So if you have someone in your life or yourself that wants to further their education or sign up for college, this is a great opportunity. You'll find out about it here in just a little bit. Also, let's go to New York State issues. Just as an update from our backyard, Ithaca College has admitted to letting a trans athlete compete in a Division III rowing competition over the weekend. The college allowed this despite the fact that the NCAA changed its gender eligibility policy back in February to prevent biological males from competing in women's sports in compliance with President Donald Trump's executive order addressing the issue. I just bring that up because it is in our backyard at Ithaca. We'll see where this leads at a time when we know that Trump is and his administration is cracking down on the kind of anti-Semitism on college campuses and showing that he's not afraid to have the fight with college campuses. So I'm not sure what kind of, for lack of a better word, hot water this gets Ithaca College into. Ithaca provided a statement saying the participation of the trans athlete was due to a misunderstanding by the coaching staff about what was considered an official NCAA event. It is the intent of Ithaca College to comply with all NCAA rules. Under those rules, the student athlete in question has the ability to be on the roster and participate in practices and open gender competition. The past weekend, there was a misunderstanding by the coaching staff about what constituted an official NCAA event because there's no third varsity rowing event at NCAA championships. Just something to keep in mind. We'll keep you updated on that if there's anything new. Also, on the New York State front, according to the Albany Times Union, New York, and this is as predicted, New York is beginning to release prison inmates early because of the staffing crisis that persists. As many people speculated, specifically at the time of the CO strikes, that with Governor Hochul firing those corrections officers, was this all done in a way that eventually it will lead to more prison closures, of course, letting inmates out because there's not enough room, not enough staffing. And here we are. New York is going to begin letting inmates out of understaffed state prisons if they are within 110 days of their release date and have a residence where they can live that has been verified by a parole officer. State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision Daniel Marticello issued a memo Monday to all state prison superintendents directing them to create spreadsheets of the inmates who qualify for early release, which will include factors such as whether they have active warrants or are participating in drug treatment programs. The memo was released a day after nearly 50 corrections officers at Mid-State Correctional Facility in Oneida County briefly refused to go into the facility due to low staffing and what they viewed as a dangerous situation. A person briefed on the matter said the prison was operating during the Sunday morning job action with fewer than a dozen corrections officers and a small number of National Guard members. Quote, in view of the current staffing crisis and in order to have the appropriate balance between the safety and well-being of all those working and residing in DOCCS correctional facilities and public safety, it is appropriate that I, as commissioner, exercise my authority pursuant to Correction Law Section 73 to move individuals from the department's general confinement facilities into residential treatment outcome status. So now we're to the point, because of these just untenable working conditions, work shifts, how much they're working, where obviously people are not signing up to be corrections officers, and those that can retire are retiring. Some willing to lose their job because of the safety issue, because of the HALT Act. So we have this severe understaffing. And now, as predicted on this program by many guests and myself, this is now leading to the early release of prisoners. Also, the police officers that we mentioned yesterday on the program and last week as well, who aided ICE, this was in Rochester, are back at work, but protesters want them fired. The officers were back on the street Monday after completing a 2-hour training session on the city's sanctuary city policy. The remaining 2 officers have not yet received the training because they had scheduled days off. It is unclear if the officers will face any further disciplinary action. On Monday evening, a group of around 100 protesters gathered outside City Hall and called for the officers to be fired. Cassandra Bosa, a senior manager of organizing and strategy for the Finger Lakes chapter of the New York Immigration Coalition, said what we saw happening in our city was a clear act of collusion. It was a clear violation of our sanctuary policy here in Rochester. Now, we know Tom Homan, the border czar, showed his support for these Rochester police officers because all they did, they had the audacity to help to be backup for ICE agents that were in trouble, that were in need. So 8 of the 10 Rochester police officers who assisted ICE agents are back on patrol. Protesters demanding they be fired. City Council member Stanley Martin joined protesters in the protest. We know that the mayor came out and said this is not who we are. We don't help ICE. Now we have our governor, Governor Hochul, calling for, let me take a step back. 8 people, including a mother and her 3 children, were taken into custody by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement from an upstate New York farm last week, and now Governor Hochul is calling for their release and return to the Empire State. So this is piggybacking, not about the same area, not about Rochester, but all very similar. This fight against ICE. We know the Democrats right now are demanding that some of these illegal criminals be sent back to the United States from El Salvador. We may have an opportunity to talk about that a little bit later on. But federal agents from the Department of Homeland Security apprehended 4 people from a Sackett's Harbor farm last Thursday and then made a separate arrest of the mother and her children who resided in a home on the property. The 3 kids included 2 high school-aged children and a 3rd grader who have all been transported to an ICE detention facility with their mother in Texas. Governor Hochul saying there's absolutely no justification for masked ICE agents to rip an innocent family, including a child in the 3rd grade, from their home. I'll work with anyone to crack down on violent criminals, but I want the family returned to New York, and ICE needs to immediately answer for these actions. Do you believe Governor Hochul when she says, and I quote, I'll work with anyone to crack down on violent criminals, as we just had the story of releasing criminals early because there's staffing shortages in our prisons, as we see the bail reform, as we see so many victims that didn't need to be victims because of bail reform, or even the HALT Act? Do you really believe Governor Hochul when she says she will work with anyone to crack down on violent criminals? But that's just a quick update. And on the budget, I know I'm moving fast. That's how the program is this morning. But the legislature has passed a $1.7 billion extender, as of course the state predictably missed the budget deadline. And when I say predictably, Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski said with 100% certainty on Friday's program that they would not make the budget deadline. He was right. But it may have been April Fool's Day, but the soon-to-be late state budget is no laughing matter in Albany, according to the City and State New York. The state legislature passed a $1.7 billion budget extender on Tuesday that will fund the state government through Thursday. How much we spend from Tuesday to Thursday? And by the way, we're not going to make the Thursday deadline most likely either. State Budget Director Blake Washington acknowledged yesterday that despite negotiations over the weekend, the 2026 fiscal year budget would not be settled by its April 1st deadline, and more extenders have been prepared. State Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins and Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie have said that policy disputes rather than concerns about finances are the main thing holding up the budget. Though there are also questions about how to fund the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, the MTA. Changes to discovery law, an expansion of the involuntary commitment standards, a mask ban, and a ban on cell phones in schools are among Hochul's non-negotiable policy priorities. Washington saying, we'll take as long as it takes to deliver. Senate Minority Leader Robert Orr said that New Yorkers are seeing a failure in leadership from Democrats and state government. I'd rather have a good budget than an on-time budget. That's Rob Orr. But we're going to have neither. We're going to have a bad budget, and it's going to be late, and that is normally the case. We're going to hear from Joe Sempolinski. He sent out a statement on this. We're going to read your comments. Stay with us. A couple more New York State issues, then we'll get back to the federal level. Weigh in on Cory Booker's 25-hour and 5-minute groundbreaking speech, breaking the record. What did it accomplish? That's the question I'm posing to you this morning, other than perhaps fundraising dollars. And then, of course, the House canceling the rest of the votes for the week after that GOP rebellion on proxy votes. All that and anything else we're covering. Feel free to weigh in. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you for all the waves. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox.
Advanced robotics surgery is now available in the Southern Tier. With the Da Vinci Surgical System, experienced local surgeons at UR Medicine St. James and Jones Memorial Hospitals can perform minimally invasive procedures with greater precision.
That means less pain, shorter hospital stays, and a faster recovery so you can get back to life sooner.
Trust the expertise of your local surgeons and the most advanced technology for your surgery.
You no longer need to travel for cutting-edge surgical care.
Visit robotics.urmc.edu for more information.
What better way to start or end every day than relaxing in your very own Hesselson hot tub? Massage therapy, relaxation, stress reliever, pain management, soothing muscles, or just spending time with a loved one. Hot water therapy really does make every day better. Hesselson's has been a part of this great community for over 70 years, still being locally owned and operated. So make the drive to Hesselson's and start making your path to a better life today. And after 70 years, it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. And how can we help like that in our small businesses, not to sound cliche, but are the backbone of our community? Let's talk about thanks, as always, to you, the viewers, for sending in your texts and your voicemails. Now we go to a comment. This is from John in Elmira. Make sure to catch Frankly Speaking only on AM Big Fox News WYDC or visit our website at WYDCTV.com.
Something with a diamond in it.
Diamondback rattlesnake.
It's in the name. Name a low-calorie food you might make your edible underwear out of.
Salmon.
Watch it weeknights. Share it the next day.
Wild caught Norwegian teriyaki.
Share in the fun. Weeknights on Family Feud.
7 and 7:30 on Big.
The Frankly Speaking roof cam. Look at our beautiful view of historic Marcus Street. Give Boss Security a call today for all your business and home security needs and thank them for this amazing view every morning. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning that you just were overlooking. Let's go to some viewer comments. We're going to hear from Chris Callis here in just a few moments. Viewer comments. Booker's stunt, meaning Cory Booker's stunt, was just silly nonsense that accomplished nothing more than to make the Democrats look like a bunch of foolish clowns. And in this, I found a comfortably pleasing satisfaction. Thank you very much, even if I had trouble saying it. Ken writes in, I'm not going to hold my breath waiting for the DOJ to investigate politicians for insider trading, kickbacks, quid pro quo, etc. When you look at the net worths of our politicians in general, there are politicians from both sides of the aisle that are unusually wealthy. Thank you. I couldn't remember the term earlier. Thank you, Ken. Unusually wealthy. Given their time in Congress and annual salaries, I suspect that there are a fair amount of Republicans that are using the system to achieve wealth, and they don't want their dirty laundry aired either. Thank you very much. Thanks, Ken. Comment from a different viewer. Due process begins when you enter legally, not after you break the law. Good point. And then finally, another comment from a different viewer. Question. Given that shallow thinkers such as Hochul and the sanctuary cities, if someone gets harmed by an illegal alien or a prisoner that has been released early as a result of the shortage of COs, which she caused, can she be sued? Probably not. And I just say that because look at Lake and Riley's murderer. That was because of New York and the sanctuary laws and the laws here. So I don't know, maybe a civil suit? I'm not sure how that would work. It's a great question. I'm no lawyer, trust me, but that's a great question. But that goes back to bail reform. All these people that are let out on the street before the ink's even dry on the paper, and how many victims, I know I say a lot on this program, but how many victims didn't need to be victims because of the bail reform laws, much like what you're talking about with prisoners being released early because of the lack of COs that she caused. Now, we were talking about the New York State budget, and I see some other comments coming in. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to read them before. We'll read them after we talk with Chris Callis. But Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski released a statement on Albany Democrats missing the budget deadline. He said, this is just another example of one-party control in Albany leading to dysfunction and a broken system. It is incredibly unfortunate to see a government wholly dominated by one party be unable to carry out the most basic functions of governing and pass an on-time budget. Since the disastrous 2019 discovery law changes took effect, shortening the time prosecutors have to turn over evidence, prosecutors have been forced to dismiss thousands of cases. It's clear that we need to change our discovery laws to protect public safety, but the Democrat majorities in both the Assembly and Senate have rejected any discovery law changes, preferring the status quo. I will continue to advocate for responsible spending of taxpayer dollars, firm in the belief that New York will thrive if people can keep more of their hard-earned money. Albany Democrats may believe the time to spend $250 billion is here, but I still firmly believe taxpayer dollars belong with the taxpayer. Thank you to Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski. And that, to piggyback off of what he was saying, here we go. As tax day approaches, I know, I'm sorry. I'm sure some of you don't want to hear that. I'm one of those people. I know it is coming quickly. As tax day approaches, a new study ranks New York as the second most tax burden state in the country, trailing only to Hawaii. The personal finance site Wallet Hub released its 2025 report analyzing each state's overall tax burden. And yes, our sky-high individual income taxes ranks the second highest in all of America. We were second overall in tax burden, 13.56% of personal income going to that tax. We're first in individual income tax burden. We're number one, folks. We're number one. Fourth in property tax burden, and 22 and 22nd, I should say, in sales and excise tax burden. Now, most residents, I don't think, will be surprised by this. But the numbers highlight just how steep the tax load is, especially for working families and higher earners. Wallet Hub analyst Chip Lupo said it's easy to be dismayed at tax time when you see just how much of your income you lose. New York has the highest individual income tax burden in the country, which can significantly impact take-home pay. Yes, I would say so. So again, New York. Let's say, I know there's some people from PA probably having a chuckle at this, but for all the people from New York watching this, we're number one in individual income tax burden, and overall, we are the second highest tax burden in the United States of America, coming as no surprise for so many of us and so many of the people that are watching from a different state that left for that exact reason. So it really comes as no surprise, but I think it's worth highlighting as we see the delay in the New York State budget, $250 billion budget for New York State. All right, we got some comments coming in, but coming up next, we're going to hear from Chris Callis. He's going to tell us about the upcoming college fair, that annual tradition, that yearly tradition at the Elmira Elks Club. We are going to read your taxes after that. Did I say taxes? Read your comments after that. Sorry, I'm reading your comments and looking at this. We're going to read your comments when we come back. Keep those comments coming in. We're having great discussions this morning. I really thank you. I really appreciate it. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. Stay with us.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and have been diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call today.
Anywhere can record crimes as they happen, and we're going to watch them right here.
He just took his car.
With cameras everywhere, you can run, but you can't hide. Watch iCrime.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. And how can we help like that in our small businesses, not to sound cliche, but are the backbone of our community? Let's talk about thanks, as always, to you, the viewers, for sending in your texts and your voicemails. Now we go to a comment. This is from John in Elmira. Make sure to catch Frankly Speaking only on AM Big Fox News WYDC, or visit our website at WYDCTV.com.
The Bix website is here now. WYDCTV.com. Local and national news that keeps you informed and involved. WYDCTV.com. Today's weather, up to date and in your town. WYDCTV.com. Sports news, local events, and health stories that affect you. WYDCTV.com. The Big Fox website. Your news here now. WYDCTV.com.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Aiken. We're broadcasting from the Hesselson studio, and joining me in the studio this morning, Chris, I can't believe it's already this time of year that we're talking college fair.
It's here, Frank. It's here.
How's the planning going?
Busy. You know, we're 4 weeks out from today from the college fair, and as I told you before, and thank you for having me on first and foremost, the planning never stops.
No.
The planning starts the next day. I mean, matter of fact, last year I went over the reviews from people.
I remember.
And going over, okay, what do they suggest? What do they want improved? You know, what do we need to work on? And of course, as you know, every year it's funding.
Yeah,
it's funding. Yeah, that's what I need, donations.
And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Of course, it's the college fair at the Elmira Elks Lodge. That's April 30th from 6 to 8 p.m. So the planning is in full force right now. How long have you been doing the college fair, Chris?
Well, when I was elected to the Elmira Heights School Board in 2010, Mary Beth Fiore, who was the superintendent, and I had this plan in the fall. We were on our way to New York City, and I got talking to her about it. We were down there for the New York State School Board Conference, and I said, I'd like to do this in the fall. And this started in 2010.
Wow.
With the idea, and we ran it in the spring of 2011.
I got to say, I've been interviewing you almost the whole time, because you went back to the radio days, right?
Correct.
We did that. Time flies.
Yeah, you think about it. I mean, that's 14 years ago.
Yeah. That's wild. And when you mentioned that you're on the school board and that's where this kind of sprung from, I think it's really important to note that what you're putting on here is nothing that's being funded by taxpayers.
That's correct.
Maybe you could stress that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I'd like to, and thank you for that opportunity. This is not funded by your taxpayer dollar for the schools. This is done on the goodness of the Elks, letting us host it there. I'm a proud member of the Elks.
Of course.
And on top of that, it's by all these sponsors, which I'll go to with you in a minute.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for these sponsors and the volunteers, this would not be happening.
No, and as you said, it is a lot of work to put on. What made you in the first place come up with this idea to hold a college fair in our area? Why do you go through all this work?
Well, a couple things. First off, my master's in higher education administration. I was working in higher education at the time, and I realized we need to catch these juniors and sophomores and seniors that haven't got a plan. Right. And unfortunately, they're out there. When I worked in Long Island for SUNY Westbury, we used to call him Larry Come Lately from Long Beach, who would show up in August and say, I want to go to school.
Right.
Well, college starts next week or that week. So my thing is, it's never too late to go back to school. It's never too early to plan to go to school. So with that being said, it's a passion of my heart. One of the biggest things that I've seen is the brain drain in this area, the southern tier. People go off to college and don't come back.
Yes.
You know, and we have opportunities here for you to come back and get gainful employment. So that was one of the reasons. No one did this for me. We didn't have this then. And you know, I care about our community. I can't stress that enough. And with a background in education and I work in higher education and all my connections and experiences, why not bring that to Elmira Heights, New York?
You know, it's interesting because someone had texted me recently, and I won't name names or even the school district, but they wondered when you were going to be back on the program and when the college fair was going to be, because they remember our interview from last year, and they felt that the school district that their son or daughter was going to was not doing an adequate enough job getting them the information on colleges. And I thought, well, that's very interesting. So you actually are kind of like an added bonus addition to add on to what they're doing in the schools.
Correct. And I'm also a free addition.
Yeah, right.
As I mentioned, you know, we don't get paid. I don't, and the volunteers to do this. And it's unfortunate. Our school counselors, as I always call them guidance counselors, they're under a lot of stress. They play many roles.
Oh, yeah.
God bless them all for what they do in the school district. So it's tough. So here they have an opportunity to I make sure I send a flyer out and an invite to every school district.
Of course.
So if there's a school district that isn't getting this information, let me know. I'm still in the phone book.
Yes.
You can look me up. You can call me. You can email me. It's on the poster. I will get that information to that school district.
So it's easier to find your number than it is to actually find a phone book.
You know, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Good point. Checkmate right there. Yes, that's very true. But they can reach me. And on top of that, I will get this information out to that school. And going back to that, yeah, so they're a lot of them are overworked without question.
Oh, yeah.
And so then you throw on this college fair. So I haven't taken that burden off of them by running this event. And that's how we get this up and going. But we'd love to have them there. I've said this to you many times. Every school counselor who can see me, hear me, know about it, they're welcome to come down. They get a chance to meet 50 different opportunity of colleges, universities, tech schools, law enforcement agencies, which I'll get into that are there.
Great idea.
And one night. It's one-stop shopping.
Yeah.
And all the work is done for the students and the guidance/school counselors to come down and talk to them.
You had mentioned volunteers. How many people does it take to run this?
Well, a lot, a lot. Sometimes I have more that volunteer, sometimes I have less.
Sure.
But I want to give a big shout out, if I could, real quick, to my lovely wife, Lindsay, who does a tremendous amount of work with me and puts up a lot of my things to get this going, especially the last 4 weeks out that we are today, because things are coming in. Also, my very good friend, Chris Giacondo, who's been my IT specialist down at Philadelphia. And he's not even there, and he's helping out volunteering. I couldn't do it internally without April Bates from the Elmira Elks, who runs everything for us in the books. Also, there's several others that I could run down a list of people that help us out to volunteer. And then, as I was mentioning earlier, the Career Development Council this year and last year jumped on board to help out because they're in the schools. They're promoting this college fair.
Right.
And they've jumped on board to help get this word out amongst the schools, too. And they've helped me with that, too. And they've helped make this poster. Dr. Harris.
It looks great.
Yes, so it's awesome. I could go right down the list of people. Jen Sunsire, who put this together for me, and then of course we got laminated, and we're going to be putting this around all parts of town. Maybe AJ's studio here will let me put one up. He come to the event before and said, anything I can do to help you.
Yeah.
So that's the point. But yeah, it takes a ton of volunteers. Mike Seifert, Eddie Atwood, Chris Giacondo, as I mentioned, my wife. My son Leonidas, who likes to play the little host. He's like the people greeter who's there, who walks around. And Jenny Jarvis, Deb Lynch, I could go down, Dan Delorme. My goodness, there's so many that help me out. Mike Seifert, who's an elected official.
Of course.
And of course, all the sponsors that I could go right down. But over the years, it's changed. And I want to give a big shout out to the Elmira Heights School District, Superintendent Mike Gill, who stepped in for me when I got COVID a couple years back, did a tremendous job, and all the volunteers that stepped up and made it happen. The Heights School District has been a wonderful supporter of this. Of course, I'm on the school board, and that helps with the push internally. But anyone that wants to get involved, I could use their help.
Yes. And you had mentioned sponsors. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But for those that don't know about the College Fair, and there's really no excuse at this point not to know about the College Fair at the Elmira Elks Lodge, Wednesday, April 30th, 4 weeks from today, 6 to 8 p.m. Who is this catered for specifically?
Anyone that wants to further their education. So if you're a student looking to transfer from a community college or you'll be getting ready to graduate in May, congratulations. Come down, talk to somebody about transferring and go on to the next part of your career. If you're somebody that has lingering credits out there and you want to finish it, come down and talk to them. See how the application process works. If you're a struggling student, you need motivation, talk to them. This is the reality check. Geez, I'm in 10th grade, my grades are struggling. They're going to tell you, you need to have a certain GPA if you want to get in this institution.
Right.
You need to pull it up. Or if you're that Larry come lately from Long Beach, who's a senior, doesn't have a plan, come down and talk to the colleges. If you're a freshman thinking about, geez, what do I want to do in a couple of years? What do I need to do to get in that college? Come down. It's targeted the entire community. And if you're a grandparent that's helping pay for school for your grandson, or if you're a parent looking to say, how are we going to afford this? Come down, talk to them, see what the costs are. You'd be shocked at all the monies that are out there. The Elmira Elks, in particular the Elks in general, gives out the second most amount of money behind the federal government for scholarships.
Wow.
And we'll have the flyer right there available to them. So come down and get the flyer and check it out. And one thing, if I take the second here, we talked about this last year, and I'm looking to finish up the donations because I deem donations. At 8 p.m. at the end of the event this year, we're going to do the first time ever. We're going to have 3 drawings done. One is going to be by Mayor Dan Mandel, the city mayor, who's also been a sponsor, has jumped on board the last couple of years. Also, the exalted ruler from the Elks is going to pull, Rick Petsky is going to pull a number, a name. And then we have a third person we haven't decided yet, but I'm pretty sure I'm trying to figure out who that might be. Possibly Sally Dean Mosier coming down and be the ringer for this.
Yeah.
But it's going to be $1,000, $600, and $400, and we're going to be able to write you a check.
That's wonderful.
Right there on the spot. And again, this wouldn't be done without donations.
Wow.
And what do you have to lose except come down, walk around, fill out a form, see what's happening. And possibly have your name drawn to get a scholarship.
$1,000 scholarship.
Yes.
That's amazing. This is what I mean. You change it and adapt each new year and make it bigger and better, but still, again, like you were talking about earlier, community focused.
Correct.
And now we can mention the sponsors because there's so much involvement with the community that would not make this possible. Before we go through that, is it still possible to be a sponsor?
It is. It's definitely. Sponsor availability is right up to the night of the event. Because we need the cash to make this happen.
Yeah.
The bottom line, as we pointed out, as you did, it's not funded by the school districts. So if there's someone out there that would like to be a sponsor, you want to call me up and say, hey, Mr. Callis, you want to email me, by all means, please reach out to me. whatever you can give, it helps. Every penny goes towards the college fair. So yes, it's not too late. But if I could rattle off some of these sponsors, would be great. As always, Hilliard has been a wonderful sponsor.
Great. Yep.
Can't do it without them. The Elmira Elks, of course. A Horseheads Elks lets us borrow tables because we have to go get tables and bring them back. Yeah. And they've been a sponsor too. Thank you for their donation. The Elmira Heights PFO has been a sponsor. They've come on board. Thank you for them. Hamilton Meats is a new sponsor. Chris Bennett has helped us out now this year. We've also got Jeremy Gulich in the Bulldogs Cafe because of food, wonderful pork. Matter of fact, one of the reviews said it was the best pulled pork they've had ever.
Not just at the college fair.
Not at the yeah, which is great. Culligan Water, which you can see right here behind me,
of course,
has been a sponsor. Thank you for the delicious water. Margison's Insurance Agency. Mark, thank you very much. Boss Security Automations.
They do our roof cam on the program.
I sure do. Scott Beecher, thank you so much.
Job.
Great guy. Dan Mandel, Mayor of Elmira, which I mentioned. Wise Markets jumped on. Chris, the manager down there, has been a great person to help us out. He's local, right there. So thank you, Chris. Rodney Strange has been a staple. One of our
almost from the beginning, I think.
Yeah, almost. Rodney's been a great sponsor.
Great guy.
Can't do without him. Also, Marty Chalk, another legislator. Him and Rodney Strange, and of course Steve Pickering, another legislator that jumped on board. And these are just a few. I'm sorry, I cannot forget Tara at Wags, Woofs, and Wiggles at Doggy Daycare at Elmira Heights. She just jumped on board. Tara has been wonderful for this and to come on board. And again, here's some of the sponsors. Over the years, as you know, we could fill a whole wall full of sponsors that have come and gone. So if you can help us for 1 year, great. If you can help us for many years, even better. But we can't do it without the local sponsorships.
And one thing, as we wrap up here, that I wanted to mention, because you kind of alluded to it, obviously you've got public and private schools, and on this poster, there's the QR code. I mean, the list grows day by day. You got 2- and 4-year schools, in-state and out-of-state, technical schools, but you have armed services there as well, and you said police?
Yes. So with that being said, if you take this poster or you see a poster, which are up in most schools now, there's a QR code right here. You scan this with your smartphone, and the CDC put this together for us. Thank you for Deb Lynch and Sarah for doing this for us, to get this up and running, amongst others who've helped out. Internally, this is a new addition. So now you just scan it, you can see, and I update this list as they come in, which is great. But going back to the armed services, we have the National Guard, New York State National Guard, Sergeant Rankin, who's been a sponsor in the past. Hopefully he'll be a sponsor again this year. He has signed up. Of course, we have, I believe, the U.S. Navy's coming. And then on top of that, as I've talked about our local law enforcement, we have the DEC is coming again this year. We have the New York State Troopers has been a staple. They've been coming every year. Can't speak highly enough about them. We also have the Elmira City Police coming. We also have the Elmira Fire Department, because they're all looking for cadets. They're all looking for cadets. And so there's not just colleges, there's also these law enforcement agencies that are there that need to hire you and talk to you about how the training works and how you can get a job and go right into the law enforcement.
Well, Chris, thanks so much for giving us so much time. Right before we go, I ask this every year, what should attendees bring to be best prepared for the college fair held Wednesday, April 30th from 6 to 8 p.m.?
First off, bring their questions. Don't come down to a college fair without questions. Come talk to your school counselor. I'm sure they can provide you a list of questions. You can go online, reach out to somebody and talk to them about questions. Bring your questions, like how much does it cost? When is the application deadline? What is my GPA needed? Can I bring a car? Can I bring a pet? A lot of schools allow pets on campus now. Yes, they are. And then also on top of it, what's the graduation rates? That's very important. Am I going to a school where there's not a big graduation rate? Also, can I transfer to that school? What if I start locally, stay here, save some money, and then transfer out? I did that. I went to the University of Buffalo. So there's that option for you too. Do they have international programs? Maybe you want to study abroad like I did. I went to Greece. Maybe you want to do that and see a lot of other parts of the world. See if they have those. Most importantly, bring your mom and dad if you can. Bring your grandma, grandpa, bring your friends, bring your classmates, bring your teammates, because a lot of schools have practice. They don't get out till later, so we're open until 8 o'clock. So if you're having practice, to get done at 6:37, it's not too late. One thing I did forget, I want to mention, we also have this year 5 mascots that'll be out front with music blaring. We also have Elroy the Elk. We have Ace the Aviator from the local hockey team. We have Stitches from the Pioneers. Of course. We have the Spartan from Thomas Essen High School. And this year, new in addition, we have the Prowler, the Panther, from Campbell Savona High School.
That's great.
So yes, we have them coming down, and they're going to be on the corners dancing. Who knows? Probably handing out free tickets.
So you're not going to be able to miss it then.
No, it's a very entertaining event out front, and then inside, as I tell you, it's the education.
And that's the College Fair coming up Wednesday, April 30th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Elmira Elks Lodge. Thanks for giving us so much time, and I hope that we can talk again before the actual day. How's that?
Yes, sounds good. See you in 4 weeks.
That's right. See you in 4 weeks. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us.
If you're looking for home security, you get more from Vivint than anyone else. Vivint is ranked #1 for home security by Forbes and SafeWise.com. Only Vivint leads the industry in every security category, including cameras with crime-deterring technology, car protection, and 30 days of continuous video recording. Call now and you'll get free professional installation, $200 off your initial order, and 0% APR financing for 60 months. You get all this, plus superior customer service and 24/7 professional monitoring for as little as $1 a day. Don't take chances with your family's safety. There's Vivint, and then there's everyone else. Call now to get free professional installation, $200 off your initial order, and 0% APR financing for 60 months. Vivint. Smarter security, superior customer service. For your free, no-obligation quote, call
800-840-7812. That's 800-840-7812.
Hey, we need a change.
Yeah. Remember when we talked about becoming Milton Hershey Schoolhouse parents? Well, what do you think? Did you see this?
Kids, we're moving to Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Will we go to school here?
You'll go to a local school, but we'll be living on campus with the students whose lives we'll be helping.
We'll have new friends?
Yeah, we'll have a whole community to help us along the way, too.
We'll have the opportunity to help others together.
It's a career unlike any other, where family is part of the experience. Become house parents at Milton Hershey School.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Thanks to Chris Callis for being our guest this morning. Let's go to some viewer comments. The elephant in the room is the parents of illegal children are committing a crime by bringing them into a criminal situations. Why are entities supporting them? We've got an issue, a comment on that a little bit later on. Thank you for that. Mark writes in, I think Ithaca College did a no-no allowing a trans in a women's sport. They might lose their government funding. That's why I brought it to your attention, because I agree that could open a can of worms for Ithaca. He also writes in, Frank, you can read my taxes and pay them. Thank you. Yes, I got tongue twisted and meant to say read your comments and said read your taxes. But unfortunately, I will not be paying your taxes, Mark. Has another comment from a different viewer. Has anyone noticed that the majority of highly taxed states are run by Democrats? Absolutely. And that's what we're dealing with at the New York State issue. Speaking of that, and this is going to tie in with a federal issue, but out of Buffalo, a Democrat out of Buffalo, Assembly member Pat Burke, is pushing the state to hit the brakes on signing a new tentative agreement with Tesla to operate a major state-owned factory in leases in western New York. So again, Pat Burke argues that the 2014 deal former Governor Cuomo cut with the electric automaker hasn't panned out. He said he has concerns about the future of the company, whose CEO, Elon Musk, has become the face of the Trump administration. So think of this. In your district, you are saying, I don't want a Tesla manufacturer. I don't want the jobs that brings. I don't want the money, the revenue that brings, because I don't like Trump that much. Imagine this. Is this what you really want? Is this really who you want to be in bed with? He wrote, we already lost a ton of money. Are we going to lose more money? We don't have the answer for that, but I don't know if the answer is to get into another bad deal. So this is what people in his district should remember when it's election season, that he does not care about the jobs and the prosperity that would bring to his area because he doesn't like Musk and he doesn't like Trump. And that ties in with an article by Jonathan Turley. Jonathan Turley, we quote him quite frequently, but he writes, in this age of rage, it is common for people to become the very thing that they despise in others, jettisoning their most cherished values to strike out at those they hate. Since the election, Democrats have shown that very self-destructive quality of rage in adopting anti-immigrant, anti-free speech, anti-labor, and even anti-environmental positions to get at Donald Trump and his supporters. It consumes every part of a person. It is addictive and it's contagious. What these rage addicts will not admit, however, is that they like it. They need it. That was evident this week in New York, where Democrat legislators are again moving to weaponize state laws for political purposes, just like they did with Trump. This time they are targeting Elon Musk, whose dealerships, charging stations, and customers have been hit by political violence from the left. New York State Senator Pat Fahey is pledging to bar Musk from direct sales in the state. Notably, Fahey has been a longtime advocate of electric vehicles. The move will make it more difficult not just for Musk, but other EV dealers to survive. But climate change policies be damned. Fahey and her colleagues want to get at Musk in any way they can. Fahey explained, quote, no matter what we do, we've got to take this from Elon Musk. He's part of an effort to go backwards. It is hardly the only way Democrats are sacrificing their supposed values to strike at Musk. The left decries political violence like January 6th, but it largely is silent as Teslas are set on fire and Cybertrucks are covered with graffiti. It promotes boycotts and rallies with a wink at the vandals. As the violence increases around the country, the left has held protests featuring signs like "Burn a Tesla, Save Democracy." While other billionaires, from George Soros to Mark Zuckerberg, have spent big on elections for the left, Musk is somehow uniquely evil because he gives money to Republicans. Democrats will defend every illegal immigrant, but then meme that a foreigner, Musk is a naturalized American, is meddling in our government. Those who insist that they believe in free speech are supporting censorship and opposing Musk for restoring free speech protections on X. In California, labor advocates oppose expanding operations from SpaceX that would benefit workers in the state. California Coastal Commissioner Gretchen Newsom tried to block increased SpaceX launches despite their benefits for both the California economy and national security. No retaliation for, quote, hopping about the country, spewing and tweeting political falsehoods was more important. Still, the greatest hypocrisy may be found in the Democrats' willingness to abandon environmental priorities for political revenge. It is a contest of virtue signaling. Fighting for Mother Earth is fine on most days, but nothing compares to destroying Elon Musk. Lawmakers and advocates are also pressuring pension funds to divest from Tesla while trying to force Tesla showrooms to close, at the cost of New York jobs. Tesla is an American company making and selling cars in this country. It sells more electric vehicles in the U.S. and New York than any other manufacturer. Yet it must now be destroyed because, unlike Soros or Zuckerberg, Musk's political views are not acceptable to the left. Tesla was allowed to operate 5 locations to directly sell to consumers under a 2014 deal because it was viewed as good for New York jobs, the New York economy, and most importantly, the environment. None of that matters now. Fahey explained, quote, the bottom line is Tesla has lost their right to promote these when they're part of an administration that wants to go backwards. Elon Musk was handed a privilege here, end quote. It also does not matter that companies like Rivian and Lucid and their employees will be caught in the crossfire. Nothing matters but revenge. Many Democrats seem to have lost a capacity for shame. They're disgusted only by the refusal of others to yield to their demands, not the use of any means to achieve political ends. The question is, what do Democrats like Fahey now stand for when everything they are is now defined by those they hate? That was Jonathan Turley. I thought it was a great point. We got to take a short break. Weigh in on that. Weigh in on Cory Booker. Clocking in at 25 hours and 5 minutes. And the House canceling the rest of the votes for this week after that GOP rebellion. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this.
Attention, Elmeron may lead to vision loss.
If you have suffered vision problems after taking Elmeron to treat bladder pain, call the Hearn Law Firm. Elmeron may be responsible for your vision problems, and you may deserve compensation for your injuries.
If you took Elmeron and now have vision problems, call the Hearn Law Firm at 888-308-3866 right now. You could find out if you qualify in less than 2 minutes. Call 888-308-3866 for your free case review.
Do it all with Steel Battery. Power up with free extra battery deals on select Steel tools. Shop in-store and online.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. And how can we help like that in our small businesses, not to sound cliche, but are the backbone of our community? Let's talk about thanks, as always, to you, the viewers, for sending in your texts and your voicemails. Now we go to a comment. This is from John in Elmira. Make sure to catch Frankly Speaking only on AM Big Fox News WYDC or visit our website at WYDC. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street Corning. A couple comments from viewers. Democrats and Republicans, they're all crooks. And I don't see how you can say one is any better than the other. Continuing, this viewer says, why are you attacking Democrats? Republicans are not angels, that's for, we'll say darn sure. No one's attacking, just reading that piece from Jonathan Turley and the decision made by that assembly person, Pat Burke in Buffalo. I'm not sure what you're referencing, but thank you for the comments. Coming from Teen Vogue, which is not a sentence I thought I'd ever say or that I even knew there was a Teen Vogue. But the headline is, Chuck Schumer is pushing young people away from the Democrat Party with his toothless leadership. I walked away from my job as a writer for Senator Chuck Schumer after realizing the cost wasn't just political fatigue. It was my values and mental health, writes Lee Juliet. I spent a year on Capitol Hill in 2019 crafting messages for Senate Democrats. Every day, I wrote essays that trapped me between the progressive principles I held and centrist compromises that felt like betrayals. Eventually, the disconnect between my ideals and the institution I served became impossible to ignore. Leaving my job in the Democrat Party wasn't just a career move, it was survival. Wow, so imagine working for Chuck Schumer and feeling that you are not on the left enough. That you're giving up on your core progressive values. Wow. Well, anyway, so this person writes on it. We don't have time to get to all of it. But they end by saying, I walked away from my job on Capitol Hill because it broke my heart and my trust in the Democratic Party. I left feeling disillusioned, unheard, and distressed. I know I'm not alone. When the party clings to the political center and treats urgent issues like bargaining chips, it fails to meet the moment and pushes a generation away. If Leader Schumer wants his party to retain the support of young people, we need new leadership that prioritizes people over power. We need the Democrat Party to realign its strategies and policies to reflect bold action, moral clarity, and genuine connection. This means listening, showing up, and fighting unapologetically for the future that young people and all people are demanding. Not just during election cycles, but every single year. Another example of the sort of long knife out for Leader Schumer, that he is not progressive enough, not fighting hard enough. Now, speaking of the Democrat Party, what we're learning in this new book is that Barack Obama was working against Kamala Harris behind the 2024 scenes. That is being reported, that Barack Obama advocated against Kamala Harris in the wake of Joe Biden dropping out. This isn't really a surprise. We had talked about at the time that it looked as if Obama wanted Mark Kelly, but Biden, in his kind of last grasp at showing people that he had some power left, endorsing Harris and really making it impossible for Pelosi, Schumer, and Obama to not go in line with that. The 44th president reportedly argued for an open convention rather than anointing Harris as a nominee after Biden's shocking dropout. This is in that book that we've been talking about all week, Fight Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House by Jonathan Allen. Quote, President Obama absolutely did not think that Joe Biden should continue, according to our sources close to President Obama. And he also didn't want Kamala Harris to be the replacement for Biden. He didn't think she was the best choice for Democrats. And he worked really behind the scenes for a long time to try to have a mini primary or an open convention, or a mini primary leading to an open convention. He did not have faith in her ability to win the election. He was really working against her. We knew that at the time. It's just being reported now in the book. Allen further revealed that on a phone call with the vice president on the very day Biden passed the baton to Harris, Obama refused to endorse her candidacy as the nominee. And we mentioned that at the time. Quote, in one moment, he had set up a phone call with Congressman James Clyburn from South Carolina on the day that Joe Biden handed off the baton to Kamala Harris. And Obama had set up a call with Clyburn for like 5:30 that afternoon. And Clyburn thought to himself, this guy is going to try to rope me into an open convention thing. I better get my endorsement of Harris out there fast, so this is a short conversation. We told her, we think she'll make a fantastic, oh, that was at the time. So just something interesting about that new book and something that we knew at the time, but now being reiterated. Let's take that short break, and then we're going to wrap up. Get your last minute comments in. We're going to wrap up today's edition of Frankly Speaking after this.
It's a new season of Sherry.
Having a good time has always been my number one goal. I tend to get crazy. At my age, I should not be jumping up and down like that. And if you don't know what I mean, ask your mama. The young ones, y'all like, we don't know what you're talking about. But I promise you, in 30 years, you will.
It's the best time in daytime.
Weekdays at 2 p.m. on Big Fox.
Shell Missy face off in
Why can't we watch DuckTales? Because we don't learn anything.
Book Smarts versus Street Smarts.
Is it working? Are you feeling motivated? Very.
It's the battle of twins.
Life is so confusing. I always hoped it would be easier for me when I grew up. It's gonna be all right. You were faking. Bazinga.
Young Sheldon.
Weeknights at 6:30 on Big Fox.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio, wrapping up today's edition. A couple last comments from viewers. We're having too much fun with Cory Booker. Where is the fire alarm puller when you need one? Yes, I would have ended his speech quickly. That was Representative Jamal Bowman. He got voted out because of some of those shenanigans. Comment from a different viewer. Thanks. Maybe we need term limits. Yes, I think we've had that discussion on this program numerous times. I think term limits would be the easiest way to really change things in Washington for the better. But there's different ways, and we can have this conversation again in the future sometime with Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski. There's ways that you have to do it so it doesn't end up leading to really where the bureaucrats are running the show. So there has to be a fair amount of time where the term limits are. But we don't have time for that discussion today. But yes, I do believe term limits would make a major difference. As to Cory Booker, 25 hours and 5 minutes, breaking the Senate record. And that's, as far as I can tell, and I think what most viewers have been saying, is the only thing he really accomplished, which was to break that record. Nothing of real substance. Quickly, Elon Musk has urged authorities to go after the generals, as he calls them, behind Tesla attacks. This is fundamentally a case of terrorism. It's wide-scale domestic terrorism with the purpose of intimidation, and it's harming innocent people. It's really terrible. What we actually have to get are the people who are organizing and paying for these attacks and protests. That's who we really need to go after, because the people that were actually throwing the Molotov cocktails, they're the foot soldiers, but we need to go after the general. The president has made it very clear that we're going to go after those that are paying and organizing these violent attacks, and Attorney General Bondi has said the same thing. I believe that is exactly what will happen. He also called for the arrest of fake, non-governmental organization leaders, claiming they're part of a uniparty engaged in giant money laundering scheme. So to that viewer that asked if there's any more being done, apparently there is. The Department of Government Efficiency called, the chief, Elon Musk, called for legal action. With respect to the non-governmental organization, these sort of fake NGOs, I think there needs to be a number of arrests. There are fake charities run by mostly Democrats. There's sometimes a little bit of a Republican in there because they sometimes throw the Republicans a bone and say, hey, be quiet about this. So that's where you start getting the uniparty thing going on. But it's overwhelmingly to Democrats, and they give these billions of dollars to NGOs run by Democrats that they go through a whole network of additional NGOs. It's a giant money laundering scheme. Really, at this point, I think the word NGO and money laundering are almost synonymous. By the way, Doge saves $420 million by canceling 109 wasteful contracts, and Trump's Labor Department secured an eye-popping sum to return to taxpayers amid the Doge push. The Labor Department said $1.4 billion of unspent COVID funding will be returned to taxpayers through the U.S. Department of Treasury General Fund, and added that the action is being taken to recover the remaining $2.9 billion. We are out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you to Chris Callis for being on the program and telling us about the college fair. Have a great day. Thanks for all the comments. Thanks for all the waves. And we'll be back tomorrow morning starting at 6 a.m. with Frankly Speaking. Only on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We will see you tomorrow morning bright and early. Look forward to it already.
What better way to start or end every day than relaxing in your very own Hesselson's hot tub? Massage therapy, relaxation, stress reliever, pain management, soothing muscles, or just spending time with a loved one. Hot water therapy really does make every day better. Hesselson's has been a part of this great community for over 70 years, still being locally owned and operated. So make the drive to Hesselson's and start making your path to a better life today. And after 70 years, it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.